Welcome to the Business and Marketing Podcast That Makes Sense, the podcast dedicated to helping owners and founders gain clarity, untangle complexity, and eliminate the guesswork in running their business.
In each episode, we'll dive into business messaging and methods, clearing the unclear and turning confusion into specific, actionable solutions. We'll tackle and make sense of the challenges we all face, offering insights and strategies from right alongside you.
Our goal is to empower you to be the sense maker, giving you the tools to accelerate your business with clarity and confidence. I don't know about you, but I'm very excited to be back with this next episode. I feel like at this point, even though it's only our third official episode in the series, I feel like we're gathering with old friends now, getting to a place where we can sit and think together and have a conversation together.
Yeah, it is. And it's an interesting feeling to just be kind of sharing our lives like we are and seeing how it's resonating with people that are listening and sharing this journey with us. And so I'm just reminded again and again and again that we're not two gurus sitting here with reams of knowledge, but we're just two people who are doing life and want to share that experience with people around us so that if they find something useful, they can pick it up and run with it,
And I would say two people who are doing life but enjoy the idea of learning. That's something that's very central to who we are, is that we enjoy learning. It's always the path that I've taken personally. People say to me often, how did you end up doing what you're doing? And for me, it's over the last 20 years has been kind of reverse engineering and reading books and learning where I can to do what I'm doing for people. And so with that, let's kick this off. So as you remember, if you listened to our last episode, we were talking about this idea of grow or go. Am I the unclear in my business? Well, this episode, what we're going to be talking about is the pumice and the sponge, when there's no capacity to learn, right? We've talked about the hidden forces, the unclears that derail a business. Then we asked the harder question, what if the unclear is you? What if it's me? But what if this issue goes even deeper? And I think even after we've seen and owned the problem, sometimes we just don't have the capacity to learn from that. And so today we're going to be thinking about this or introducing this concept of absorptive capacity, which I know the first time I heard it felt like a very big sort of daunting word. Daria, do you want to kick us off with this idea of absorptive capacity and what it is?
Yeah, it's something that's fascinated me for years. And we use the analogy of the pumice and the sponge deliberately because it's the best way of visualizing absorptive capacity. If you think of a pumice in a bucket of water, pumice stone, and a sponge in a bucket of water, if you submerge them both for the same period of time and then withdrew them from the bucket of water, the pumice stone would be hardly wet at all and would dry almost immediately, and the sponge would be laden with water. And so absorptive capacity of the sponge is far greater than the capacity of the pumice stone. And so absorptive capacity really refers to my ability to absorb new knowledge and to take it on board and to understand it and to put it to good use, to apply it, to develop it, to make it my own. And the greater my absorptive capacity, the better I'll be at getting value from the partnerships that I form, the people that I speak to, the relationships that I do, the learning that I do just in conversation, and the learning that I do on my own. A really key principle.
It's interesting. My next question was actually going to be, why is absorptive capacity? Why does it matter? Why is it important? But you kind of touched on it there. And I think maybe the direction I'll go in with this question then becomes something more like, how does this connect with me potentially being the unclear in my business?
Well, I think in my experience, there have been situations where I've had the knowledge to do something, but for whatever reason, didn't have the capacity to actually exploit that knowledge and put it to work. I didn't have the internal structure, the mindset. I didn't have the kind of determination, the focus, the inspiration, whatever it might be, to go and get the bandwidth often to go and do something with that knowledge and to resolve the situation, because I couldn't afford to risk it and have something else go wrong while I was in my learning kind of phase. So yeah, it's it could be me, but sometimes I can see the problem. I simply don't have the bandwidth to do something about it. I don't have the bandwidth to apply the knowledge that I've gained in order to do something about it. And so I find myself stuck. And it's not an unclear that's the unclear. It's not me that's the blockage. It's my capacity and my inability to move on the knowledge that I have to get the unclear to move.
And so I know that outside of this discussion, in other conversations, you and I have talked about this idea of absorptive capacity and being able to look at potential help or guidance outside of our business or outside of our immediate sort of area in our lives, even if we're not applying this in business.
Yeah.
And we can have people that can help us, right? So if we go back to that marathon analogy that I've used throughout these episodes, where I failed at that Hever Castle marathon,
Yeah.
and I finished, what was it, like 10 kilometers short of the finish line.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was involved with that. I had to an extent, I had the knowledge of the head knowledge of what was required, and you had given me training materials, and you had given me insights based on your personal experience in the past of running long distances.
Yes.
But the trouble for me came when I got to a place where I hadn't internalized that understanding. And
Yes.
so I got to a place where I found it tough, and all of a sudden the pack that we were running in broke apart, right? Everybody was kind of keeping their own pace, and I got left on my own, and I didn't have the person with me who was giving me that external knowledge to know that what I was going through was normal.
Yes.
And so what happened to me when that was stripped away, taken away, I crumbled. I
Yes.
didn't have the internalized understanding of that knowledge, that running knowledge, that, whatever it is, endurance mentality to keep me going. And I think to me that speaks perfectly as an analogy for myself, just thinking about it in real time, to this idea of absorptive capacity. What are your thoughts?
So your capacity was short by 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
And the principle that I lived my life by is this: in all my getting, get understanding.
Mm.
Get understanding. And, we spend so much time chasing new ideas and trying new things and being discontent with the way things are. And we look for more sales, we look for more clients, we look for more products, we look for more profit, we look for more cash, we look for more. Everything is about looking for more space, more. It's always
Yeah.
more. And we lose sight of the fact that we got to layer our knowledge down. And that's why we in SenseMaker, we speak about the spiral: identify, clarify, learn, apply.
Yeah.
Next round on the spiral. And what we're actually doing is we're layering knowledge into our lives, precept upon precept, kind of principle upon principle. We're layering it into our lives. Now, just to go back to your marathon analogy, which is a good one, I would suggest that the problem comes in if you don't run another marathon.
Yes.
Because what you've been given is you've been given some new knowledge. You've learned that at about 10 Ks to go, you're going to suddenly find yourself in a place where it's you and you and you alone. And it's down to you to get it done. And you've learned that there's going to be a demand on your ability to discipline yourself to keep going that you never knew about before. And that's evidence that you've been around the spiral, right?
Yes.
And the way we grow our absorptive capacity, or our ability to absorb the punch of the marathon, is to go and get better knowledge, get better educated about it. So I gave you knowledge that I had, but that was limited to my experience, right? So
Mm.
you need to go and buy books, and you need to join a running club, and you need to form collaborations and partnerships with other people who are obsessed with running marathons, so that you can learn from them by osmosis,
Yes.
and by them speaking and teaching you, and you going and applying it and internalizing it and making it your own.
Yes.
That's how we keep the spiral going, and we keep our absorptive capacity, or our capacity to absorb, growing.
100%. And I think just hearing you speak there brought back to memory some of these scenarios that I can kind of recall, as as far as or as far back as I can remember, certainly I was always looking at ways to make money and to have a business. And I think we even talked about it briefly in one of these episodes where I'd sell you those marigold flowers
Yeah.
um, forever. But the thing is, as I got older, my attempts at different businesses, I would find myself operating in the dark. And what I mean by that is, and this kind of was brought back to memory by what you said, there was no external feedback loop. And so I was operating in a vacuum with no
Yeah.
external feedback loop to get an idea of where I was at, where I was in terms of capability, but where I was lacking in terms of skills, knowledge, understanding to get to market, to generate a sale, whatever the thing might have been. And so I think, that is as true for my marathon experience. I failed at that marathon, but if I hadn't have done it, I would never have known that I was only capable of 32 kilometers.
Yes.
And so what I tend to do now, and it was kind of by accident this, and I'd be interested to know if you do anything similar, but what I tend to do now is I tend to look for ways to open up feedback loops for myself to kind of get an idea on where those gaps might be, because I
Yes.
think if we can, that's the idea of sense making, is turning this light on, shining a light on the unclear, shining a light on the gaps, right? These absorptive capacity gaps where we're struggling to absorb knowledge, where we're missing knowledge. If we've got a feedback loop open and we're actually trying, we're taking things to people and saying, will you buy my product? Or we're saying, I'm selling this to make a profit. And then we look at that and we measure it and we say, have I made a profit? Have I sold this thing? Do people want to buy it? We've actually got something measurable. We've got a
Yeah.
feedback loop to start operating from.
Exactly. The picture comes to mind of throwing a ball against the wall, which led me to another thought. I remember when I was in the infantry in South Africa in my youth, and we were on a shooting range in a town called Potchefstroom. We were using live ammunition one night with tracer bullets on the shooting range. And we were firing away, and they'd said to us, "Don't shoot behind the shooting range. Keep your shooting below the berm. Make sure you're aiming for the target." And some wise guy decided to find out why they didn't want us to fire around over the back of the shooting range, and it started a massive felt fire. And the thing is, there was the feedback loop
Yeah.
that we had, and we soon learned that that was not a good course of action to take. And the idea of the ball against the wall is that there is another side to the wall.
Yeah.
The ball might be hitting the wall and coming back, and it might look like that's a finite end to the experience that I'm having. But actually, increasing my absorptive knowledge is about going and finding out what's behind the berm,
Mm.
finding out what's behind the wall, finding a way around the wall, under it, over it, through it, and increasing my capacity for trying, increasing my capacity for experimenting, and for taking what I learned from those experiments and doing something about it.
And so what we can start to see here is that, simply having access to outside knowledge, or whatever it might be, outside help or assistance, it doesn't guarantee that it's going to be understood or used or lead to any real change or something that's going to be lasting. Um, inside of us, right? We have to own it. That's what we can see here. We have to own this understanding, as you
Yes.
said at the start, in order to get understanding. So, with that, how if we go back to this idea of pumice and stone, pumice no absorption, a pumice stone no absorption, sponge very absorbent. How do we move from a pumice stone to a sponge?
I'd suggest that it starts with me and me taking ownership of the situation, Brad.
Mm.
It means that I've got to accept, even as I'm standing here, I've been in consultancy for most of my life, and I've studied and read and learned, and yet I sit with people who are so incredibly educated and who are so incredibly wise and who are just so developed in their thinking that I feel like a schoolboy again.
Mm.
And I think the move from pumice stone to sponge starts with me saying, I'm a pumice stone.
Yeah.
As I stand here today, I'm saying, I'm a pumice stone. And there's stuff that I've got to learn. And I need to subscribe to a library and get books out. And if I can't read, let me listen to the books. Or if I don't understand, let me find someone who can explain it to me. But above all, let me make the knowledge my own. Because I think it's possible to put myself in a place as a pumice stone where I go in as a pumice stone and I come out as a pumice stone. I
Yeah.
remember working for people that we spent huge amounts of money on coaching and teaching and training. And the boxes of material that they'd bought at the conferences had never been opened. And sometimes we can feel better because we bought the stuff, but it's no good. I'm still a pumice stone. I've got to open the box and I've got to get inside there and I've got to figure it out and make it my own and
Yeah.
me become the sense maker in my life and me getting my knowledge for me and testing that knowledge with the people around me. So the move from pumice stone to sponge starts with me accepting that I am and that I probably to some degree always will be because I've got preformed ideas and thoughts about things, but that I want to constantly push up against that barrier, constantly push myself to learn more, to understand more about myself, about my family, about my business, about my business partners, about everything that's going on around me in my life, and soften up my heart,
Yeah.
soften up my thinking, soften myself up on the inside, so that I can bypass the wall, bypass the pride that says I can't, I'm supposed to know everything here, bypass the inadequacy or the fear of looking stupid or whatever, and go and explore behind the wall, go and explore behind the berm, see what's there, find the problems, solve them. That's where we're going to learn.
I love all of that, but how do we build these foundations for learning? How do we get that in place? So I hear what you're saying, and I'm speaking from my own personal challenges here that I've had, where I know that I need to learn something, but sometimes it's just not going in. How do I start creating those foundations for learning? If we think about grow or go from the last episode where we're talking about this idea of a growth mindset, how does a growth mindset connect with absorptive capacity and my foundations that I can lay to be able to learn more effectively?
What I need to do is I need to approach it from the point of view that I'm not in this on my own. So in SenseMaker, we built a community of business owners and parents and marketeers and so on. We built a community of people who spend time together in mastermind calls, solving problems together, sharing ideas, sharing thinking. And in their own right, outside of that environment, sense makers are talking to each other and testing their thinking. And I think the principle here is that learning and personal growth and overcoming the problem of limited absorptive capacity is is um, is a team sport.
Mm.
It's I need people. I need people to be talking to me. I need people to be challenging me. I need people to be asking me to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing and what my intent is in what I'm doing, so that I've got other views questioning me and making me think about what I'm doing.
I think that there's a temptation nowadays, with all of these tools that we have available to ourselves with AI and stuff like that. I think it probably just slots in with hiring coaches and consultants, that sort of thing, where you bring in this external knowledge, but the temptation can be to give into the perceived, I don't know even what the word is, this sort of temptation of there's this like untapped, unlimited knowledge in the machine. I don't need to learn anything. Let me just look at ChatGPT, or let me ask Google's Gemini, and it will give me the answers I need when I need them. I don't need to learn it. But that's not a sustainable way of doing things. And so we need to be able to say, okay, the way that I tend to do it, I have notepads here next to me, and I write down a lot of stuff. I've tried it on an iPad, it doesn't work for me. So there's something that connects for me with a pen and paper, where I can sit and I can say, this is what I'm trying to figure out. Let me ask questions around there. And I know that questions, and asking good questions is something that we're going to come into in future episodes. But yeah, how do you do it? I find I sit and I list as many questions as I can, and try and find a point where I get to this place where I can say, okay, here's something that I'm not sure about. Let me dig there.
I would certainly ask questions. I don't do it the same way that you do. And I think your methodology is amazing. I've seen your work and it's a work of art, never mind anything else. My thinking tends to be more like scribbles on pieces of paper, and I've got hundreds of 3x5 business little cards around my study. Well, I've captured thoughts and written thoughts down, and that sort of thing. I think my learning process is somewhat different in the sense that I'm probably a little bit more academic in my approach than you are, and my go-to is books. So when I was in a position of some extraordinary challenge many years ago, and I needed to set some goals. And I remember going to the library, the local library, and getting out every book on goal setting that I could find. And then sat reading them, rewriting them, trying to write them in my own language, trying to find the kernels of truth in there that I could use to build my own picture and make sense of it myself. And so then I would go and test that with people. So I'm testing all the time in the consultancy. I'm constantly asking my clients, how do you feel about this? Does this work for you? What do you think? I've
Yeah.
had this idea. What do you think about this idea? Risking them telling me it's a bad idea or a good idea or whatever the case may be. Just interacting with people, taking my knowledge and saying, this is what I'm learning about. What do you think? Does it speak to you? And gauging by their reaction the quality of my understanding.
Yeah.
So it's like this is a living thing, Brad. It's not something that you do once. It's something that you live. You do it all the time. I
Yeah.
was in a conversation with your sister this week, and we running these programs on helping parents identify their children's learning styles. And she and I both did the test by way of experimentation and practice, and just to do it and see what came out of it. And it was absolutely amazing to see that I'm production oriented and inventive. So I find solutions to complex problems, and then I make a machine that will make that the solution happen. She, on the other hand, is reflective and relational, and thinks in pictures, where I think in models. And so I was trying to explain a concept to her, and she just didn't get it. And I happened to read some notes that she'd made on her results of her learning analysis. And I suddenly had an idea, and I came into my study early the next morning, and I mapped it out on a flowchart, and just said, "This is what's happened." And we come up here, and it didn't work, and we've come down here, and we've done this and that and the next thing. And I took her the picture, and she suddenly was like, "Oh, it makes complete sense. I've
Yeah.
known her for 40 years. I didn't, and we've struggled endlessly to communicate with each other. But something so jolly simple made such a big difference because I took it, I heard her, I applied it in my life, and I gave it
Yeah.
back to her. And it opened up the communication channel in a way that we've not experienced it before."
And you know what's interesting here with the way the direction this conversation has taken, and I feel like I say it every time, there's a lot of planning and thinking that goes into these conversations. But based on what you had said about how I tend to unpack these challenges with my line of questioning and pads and paper, and you do it in a more academic way, it brought to my mind this topic that I've heard the two of you speaking about a lot, which is learning styles.
Yes,
And it occurred to me here in this conversation that that's an absolutely fantastic label for what we're talking about here,
yes,
the foundations of your ability to learn. I would
yes,
suggest starts with first finding out your learning style.
exactly.
Identify your learning style so that you can find somebody that has the missing piece of the puzzle that you need,
Yes,
but more importantly, can communicate that to you in a way that is aligned with how you are going to learn. Right?
yes.
That's the key here to increasing your absorptive capacity.
Absolutely. And what we do on the program is we give the parents a book on understanding their children's learning style, and leave them to it.
Yeah,
And they come back for the next session, and everyone was quite tense about the book because they couldn't make sense of it. One of the mums did and cracked it out. It wasn't a problem, But the other mums that were in the group with Lauren had found it really difficult, and many of them had not actually finished the exercise.
Mm.
And the point we made to them was, that's what your children feel when they're sitting in school trying to understand a teacher talking to them in a language they don't understand.
Yeah.
That's what we as business people feel when we're sitting in a lecture or a motivational course or motivational whatever,
Coach,
or reading a
consultant.
book, whatever,
Yeah.
and we're hearing stuff, but we can't get that connection to happen. So we know there's a problem. We can't get that connection to happen. It's because potentially the information is coming in the wrong format, and I'm not harvesting knowledge in a form that I can understand it.
And that's just really connected with me because there's been so many scenarios just throughout my life, but even as we've worked together where and I've kind of touched on this before, you've said things to me and I've had that response of I know I can see that what you're saying is right and I can see that what you're saying is the right thing to do or the right direction to go in, but I can't see why. I can't connect with
Yeah,
why that is or how I'm going to make that happen.
yeah,
And so many times I'll be sitting here working on, well, not so many times, but there are definitely times where I'm working on a project here, helping people to get clear on their message. And I'm faced with this challenge of I can see I can see why there's this problem here in their business, why they're stuck. And I know the destination that I'm trying to get them to, but I can't connect the two. And it's this ability to shine light on and unpack it in a way that's meaningful to me. And I think sometimes, or something I need to get better at, and perhaps others that are listening, if we're aware of our learning style and how we absorb information, get better at defaulting and going straight to our best way of unpacking information and absorbing it.
absorbing it
Mm.
exactly. And so, at the heart of the move away from an unclear is to build a foundation for learning in my life. It starts with that growth mindset. We spoke about that in the earlier podcasts.
Yeah.
And part of that growth mindset is to start understanding how I think and how I process information. So that when I go looking for information, I am where I am. I'm looking across the chasm. I can see the problem. I know what the problem is, but somehow I can't connect myself to the problem via a solution. I need to make sure that I'm in the frame that has been designed for me as a unique human being to absorb information. I understand from a statistic that I read that 3 in 35 children in a classroom have producer disposition who are set to learn in a particular way, which means that a good number of kids in that classroom are not set up to learn in the way they potentially being taught, certainly when I was at school. It's much different now, and they're much more aware and much better at teaching children in a language that they can understand. But certainly when I was at school, you got it one way and one way only, and you either sank or swam, and that was that. But in this day and age, with the information that we've got, that power is in our hands. The power to make the choice, the power to get myself tested and find out what my learning style is, so that I know this is how I operate. This is what's going to get me going. This is what's going to turn me off, and do something with that. That's how I start to move out of the pumice stone mindset into the sponge mindset, Lego block to stickle brick.
Yeah.
No, stickle brick with lots of little connections that are interfacing with its environment, and the Lego block with limited stickle faces that are interacting with the environment. And take my growth mindset, and I start learning about myself.
It's fascinating, and I've actually learned so much on this conversation myself. So, if I'm kind of bringing this together here, and let me know how I do on this. Feel free to fill in any blanks. But firstly, how do I know if I've got an absorption problem, a knowledge absorption problem? Right. This occurred to me. I would suggest that I know that I've got a knowledge absorption problem if I'm receiving learning or educational input, but my business or life still isn't where I want it to be.
Yes.
That's a good indicator. And so if we brought this whole thing back to identify, clarify, learn, apply, the sense maker method, identify, right? So I have an absorption problem. Let me identify that with that kind of concept that I just talked about. Number two, clarify, what's my learning style? That's essential here. It's almost like it feels like it should be a secret to know that that's a thing, right? You can understand your learning style and then actively pursue learning opportunities that are going to speak to that style and just absorb that information. Learn, what do I need to be able to learn efficiently, right?
Yeah.
What are the tools that I need? What's going to help me to make the most of that learning style? And then apply, put all that I've just discovered into practice and open that feedback loop and reassess where I am once I've tried all of those.
Yeah. So you're right. Yes. If you walk into my workspace now, you'll see I'm standing up. I've got very bright lights on. There's some very soft music going in the background. My environment is a little chaotic, but I know where everything is. And what that is about is that's how I function best. That's how I function efficiently. And I can feel it in the course of a day. If I'm sitting down working, I can feel myself slowing down. And if I stand the desk up and apply what I learned about my learning style, I immediately start to come to life again. And so, yes, it is so. Discover my learning style. Get that book by Caroline Dweck. Read about mindsets. Listen to it. It's an audio book. It's an absolute life changer. It will change your view on yourself and the people around you. Understand your learning style. Understand your children's learning styles. If we can help with that, if you need to. But whatever you do, set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
Rethink growth. Growth is not necessarily more sales, more this, more that, more the next thing. Growth starts with more knowledge. Build a foundation for learning and prepare yourself and your organization to learn.
Yeah.
In the way that we've been saying here. And then more importantly than all, if I've got that going, put myself into a community of learners.
Yes.
Where I can work through that thinking like you and I work through thinking, and we're testing stuff against each other all the time.
Yes.
And in SenseMaker, we're working together all the time. Put myself into an environment where my learning can be encouraged.
And to that end, anybody that's listening to this is more than welcome to join one of our Master Your Mind groups, Zoom chats. Just message Dario or myself. It's open to any business owner. Feel free to connect with us about that. And remember and be encouraged. You're not stuck because you're no good. You're not stuck because your business is no good.
Yeah.
This is sense making. The more you listen to this and these episodes, the further into the world of sense making you will go. And because it's the information that you're consuming, it's going to shift the paradigms that you're thinking on. It's going to shift your belief systems, which will by default shift your outlook, and you'll be looking at your business and your life in a different way.
Exactly.
So what we're going to be covering next time is this ability to ask better questions, to get better answers. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time.
And there endeth the lesson. If you found this episode helpful, why not complete the free assessment on our website at sensemaker.co.uk to uncover your unclears.
SenseMaker, your bridge between where you're stuck and your reason for starting.